The 10 Commandments of Creating Wealth.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Yeah, Brian, I am super excited about this show because oftentimes we talk about out there in the world, out there in the community, we hear things and we say, oh, that's a money guy echo. That's a money guy echo. That's a money guy echo. Well, what we're able to do is we kind of compiled sort of 10, we call them commandments, but maybe they're truths or maybe they're facts or maybe they're just 10 things you ought to know about wealth building. And if you can grasp these 10 things, man, it's off to the races. You can really set yourself up for success.
Well, let's get some context here. We've been creating content 16 years? 16,
yep, that's
15,
right.
15 years. Well, I'm rounding up. I'm playing a bow right there. So 15 years of content creation, 40 years of combined financial experience
that's right.
here. I kind of weight that
It's
ballast a
heavy
little
weighted
bit
on your
more,
side.
but it is one of those things where I notice trends, I notice grounding advice, I know foundational information that just should be echoed, it should be shared. So we boiled this down to 10, and we called them the 10 Commandments of Building Wealth. And let's just jump right into these.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be great is if you're someone, maybe you've been a listener for a long time and you've told people about the show or you've tried to introduce them to us before to kind of get them excited about it, this would be a great show to tell them, hey, if you want to know what these guys think, if you want to know kind of where they stand as it relates to money and finances, check this out. I think it'd be a great starting point to do that, to introduce someone to it. So
yeah, and then you can go deeper because we have 15 years of archives that you can go deeper with every one of these concepts. But we're going to hit this fast and really load you up. So number one, live on less than you make.
I feel like this is wealth building, financial planning, personal finance 101. Like this is the thing that you really need to do to be able to build wealth over the long term.
Well, you don't get out of the gates without some type of discipline that creates margin of extra money to invest. Because if you're consuming every dollar you make, I saw somebody put on Twitter, you make $250,000, you spend $250,000, you're doing it completely wrong. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're $60,000 a year or $100,000 a year. You have to create some margin in there to save money that then eventually gets invested. So focus on living on less than you make. That's going to be an ideal thing to building wealth. And that leads right into number two. You're going to use that margin for number two, which is make your money work harder than you.
Yeah, this is one of those things. This is what I consider to be sort of a light bulb moment, an aha moment. Whenever we speak to young classrooms, whether that be high school or college, or maybe it's young professionals, when we show them that you can actually save an army of dollar bills and you can build that army to where that army in and of itself can work harder and create more wealth than you can create for yourself, it's mind-blowing. Their eyes light up. They have their moment. That is how powerful it can be. And the earlier you recognize that, the better off you're going to be in the long term when it comes to your personal wealth building journey.
Yeah, and I'll probably go a little deeper in this later in the show, but it is amazing. The first time you build up $50,000 and it goes up 10%, you make $5,000, you immediately will think, wow, that's a month worth of wages that my money made that I didn't have to actually work harder. And then when your assets reach seven figures and it goes up 10% and you make $100,000, you'll be like, holy cow. I mean, I could take a year off of anything because my money just worked harder. That's one of our favorite hobbies is every year we do the net worth.
Yep.
And I love comparing the change in my assets from the previous year. And then I compare that what I make from working. What's my labor worth? What's my time worth? Guys, it's a powerful, powerful tool.
And what I think is so great, Brian, is you said that the thing that makes your army of dollar bills so powerful is the fact that it's growing upon itself, that you're recruiting new soldiers. It's not the fact that you figured out some great investment scheme on how to make 25% per year. You figured out how to go buy the thing that no one else buys. And so we always encourage people early on in your savings journey, focus on your savings rate. Focus on how much you're building that army of dollar bills, because in the early stages, savings rate is exponentially more important than rate of return. So that is where you should focus your attention.
That leads to number three. Now, y'all went with the cooling gang title here with cherish your time. I was more in the respect your time. Time is, guys, we talk about the three components of wealth creation all the time. We're talking about discipline, we talk about money, and then this is the most important one is time. I'm telling you, people, because this is what I always think about. Every plot out there for a lot of movies, when somebody's doing something very dastardly, it's because they're old, they're rich, and they're trying to figure out how they can capture more time, how they can find the fountain of youth, because that resource is completely priceless. You can't buy more of it. So it really is a very valuable resource that a lot of people just do not respect.
So what's interesting, Brian, and we were talking about this a little bit in show prep, you said like discipline is a must. Like, right, we covered that in number 1. Discipline is something that you have to have. But time and money are negotiable. I think you're the one that said that. What do you mean by like time and money are negotiable?
Well, this is a lot of it. When you're young, you look at your peers. You might look at your boss. You look at maybe a sibling or a relative that's a little bit older. And you go, man, they have a little bit more money, but what they don't have is time. And here's when we talk about time and money are negotiable, is that if you start early enough with your savings, you don't have to save as much because you have more time. So you've expanded the time, so it requires less money. If you don't have as much time, this is for all the people who are finding us in your late 40s, you're in your early 50s. If you don't have as much time, you have to save more. You see how these things are negotiable, and you have to respect the relationship between time and money.
And so if you are that person, maybe you just got out of college, you're thinking, no, you know what? I've got my entire life to save for retirement. I've got my entire life to build wealth. I've got my entire life to fund that Roth IRA. The earlier you can figure out that right now you are sitting on your most valuable resource, the better off you will be. Because if you wait, just like you said, it only gets more and more difficult to build wealth. Whereas if you start earlier, building wealth is incredibly easy, and you'll be amazed at how powerful your army of dollar bills can be.
This rolls right into number 4 on our 10 Commandments, which is partner with compounding interest.
Yeah, so compound, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said that compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world.
I think Albert Einstein is the other one. It's not a true quote, by the way. People will say that's true. It's not true.
I think they collaborated on that quote. Compounding interest is one of the most powerful forces out there. And oftentimes we talk about how it is a net positive, how it can be something so encouraging, how it can be something so exciting. And we even here have come up with this idea that you can turn $1 for a 20-year-old because of compounding interest into $88 by the time you get to age 65. So for every 20-year-old, they can put away $1, and if they can allow that to grow, earning 10% per year every year until they get to retirement, that $1 turns into $88. However, if you wait, again, this goes back to time being powerful. If you wait until 25, it goes down to 44, but that's still super powerful, right? Compounding interest is doing the majority of the heavy lifting for you. So it can be an incredible ally on your financial wealth building journey.
Well, and you guys know I'm past the mid-40s mark now, and I'm at that stage where I've had enough time to save, invest, and we've reached some critical mass points. And when I talk to neighbors, because they know what I do for a living, and you can't help but focus on the nerdy stuff, we always, when the markets are doing really well, they'll be like, I just can remember as a kid starting to save and invest, and you just can't imagine how does the money get to this point, and then you get to it where, say, you cross 7 figures, and I've alluded to this earlier, when you have a month where the market makes like 5% on $1 million, you very quickly realize, holy cow, I made $50,000 in 1 month.
Yep.
And that's the part where I think people realize it is really incredible that your money can work harder for you, and that's compounding growth. And when this thing builds on itself, that's why it's always amazing when I tell somebody who's maybe you started a little later, or you look at the 88 times over that's on the screen right now, and you say, well, I'm not 20 years old, and I didn't start saving when I was 20 years old. I'm like, that's okay, because you're going to live to being your probably 80 years old. You're going to live to be 80 years old. There's going to be dollars in your army of dollar bill from probably when you're in your 30s and even potentially 40s that will still have the opportunity to grow 88 times over. It's exciting stuff when you think about compounding interest.
So commandment number 4 is partner with compounding interest, because there is a dark side. Yeah. There is a negative to it. We've already said that it can be a huge, huge ally to wealth building. It can also be maybe your fiercest adversary when it comes to building your wealth. And let us show you why. This is the dark side of compounding interest. Let's assume that you have a 22-year-old who carries an average credit card balance and they just make the monthly payment. So we know that credit cards have exorbitant interest rates.
Yep.
The example we have here is let's just say that they have a 16.13% average APR on this credit card. And the minimum payment for most credit cards is either $25 or 3% of the outstanding balance. And we know that right now in this country, the average credit card balance that's carried over by credit card balance carriers is about $5,300. So if you were to do that and have that $5,300 balance and just pay the minimum, over the course of the next 152 months or 12.7 years, in order to pay off that debt, it will have actually cost you $9,020. So a $5,300 debt cost you $9,000 in total. Well, that's only part of the story. That only gets you halfway there. Because we know that what if instead of making that minimum monthly payment, we have said, okay, we're going to save this money for the future. Instead of having this go to satisfying debt, we're going to have this go into our army of dollar bills to start building. Well, we know that by the time the credit card is paid off, you will have accumulated $22,315. So you have two options here. You could either pay off $9,000 total, or you could have $22,000 working for you. And if you have that $22,000 working for you and you let it grow all the way until you get to age 65, all the way until you get to retirement, that single decision could be worth almost $500,000, $461,000.
This is the key point of the opportunity cost of a situation is that and this is what's cruel about life. You're in your 20s, and you see a $5,000 to $6,000 decision, and you think, well, that's not going to cost me that much. Because, I mean, really, we're talking about if you just upgraded your iPhone every cycle that they came out with a new iPhone, you're like, that's no big deal. I can afford it. And especially in our consumer society, we do everything at $200 at a time of financing it over. But as you can see, that $5,000 to $6,000 mistake of consumption could potentially be $500,000 from your retirement self. This is the way a financial mutant has to recalibrate their brain to understand compounding interest is supposed to be your ally, not your enemy.
That's right.
And this is why we give you guys lots of grace about using credit cards, because we tell you, look, you can use the tool of credit cards, not debt, but credit card, the tool to just help you facilitate buying and, purchasing items for your household, groceries, paying for your insurance premiums, and those type of things you would have done anyway. But the moment you turn credit card use into credit card debt, you're in no-go land, because you're going to turn compounding interest against you. If you can't pay it off monthly, cut them out altogether.
All right, commandment number 5, Brian. I want to give you some credit for this one, because this one was not one that came naturally to me. I think I had to kind of learn this by having a mentor, having someone kind of walk me through this, is that you said commandment number 5 is don't compare yourself. And I think this is a really difficult thing for specifically young folks and young folks who are achievement minded, right? Because we're always trying to measure ourselves with those around me. I mean, you used to have conversations with me all the time when I talk about, hey, well, this guy I graduated with is doing this and they did this. And you're like, Bo, why do you care? Why does that matter? Why are you wasting your brain space? That has nothing to do with you. And it took me some practice to get to the point to where I was not doing that as much anymore.
I think one of the side benefits of doing this for a living, we get to sit on the front row of very successful people. And look, I'm not going to give any names because I don't want to breach that part, but we have some people we know make 7 figures. Mm-hmm. 7 figures. I didn't misspeak when I said that. Maybe even 8 figures. Mm-hmm. And yet you talk to them and you find out they think they're poor. Yep. Now that a lot of you guys are going to watch that and you're going to say, what?
How insane.
That is insane. And then you find out that all the people in their peer group have net worths well into the hundreds of millions of dollars because of just who they hang out with. And that's what I'm telling you. Guys, if you compare yourself to anyone, because the reality is somebody's going to have more than you, comparison is the thief of joy.
It's so true.
And this is, and look, I was guilty. I think especially if you come from not having resources. Maybe you've been a good student. you're intrigued about this concept of being a financial mutant and starting to save for the future, but you don't have the blessing of you come from resources. It's easy to look at your friends that maybe are getting outpatient care from their parents and, paying still on their insurance or paying from the utilities, giving annual gifts to them, and then you're over there broke as a joke. You can say, man, if I just had this or if I just had that. Don't do it, because I'm telling you, you need to focus on yourself, because you will put yourself in a limiting mindset, a limiting belief mindset, if you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody else.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. Daniel found this stat that Psychology Today research has shown that as much as 10% of our thoughts involve comparing ourselves to someone else on a daily basis. That means that we spend on average 96 minutes every day comparing ourselves to others, whether that be colleagues or people we see on social media or people we're scrolling. That is unbelievable. Imagine how much different your mind would be if you were not doing that. And this is one of the things, Brian, that I love about the Financial Order of Operations, the FOO Facebook group. Because one of the things we don't often get to talk about a ton are finances. Like, we compare ourselves with our neighbor because we see that they bought the new car, they bought the new house. Very rarely do we get to have conversations with someone and say, hey, did your net worth, my net worth, it went up by this much, or I paid off this much debt. We just don't get to have those conversations. I love seeing that kind of stuff happening in the FOO group Facebook. I feel like it's almost a positive way to do that instead of a negative.
Without a doubt, because it's positive. That's the key word you just said. And this is why I want to give you a financial mutant mindset hack, is that when you see your peers doing well, when you see your friends, I actually want you to be truly just proud of them, thankful for them, and then even turn this into an optimism moment when you be happy for people as they have success. And then also, I think, don't compare yourself, but use it as a motivator to say, hey, look, I see my boss is 35 years old and has this. I'm so happy for them, and say, man, because of what I learned from Brian and Bo and the Money Guy show on how powerful every dollar in my army is, I'm also going to have that opportunity and turn the negative into a positive, because that's something I learned a long time ago when I was the 20-something that didn't have the resources but had the knowledge that maybe somebody older than me, but like, man, I bet I'm going to be doing just as well as that person. And that's not it's still comparison, but instead of using it as a negative, use it as a positive and say, how thankful I am for my situation and the opportunity to grow beyond. That is a financial mutant mental hack that will get you beyond the green with envy monster that takes it all away from you.
And I think what's great is when you can stop comparing yourselves, when you flex that muscle, when you begin to sort of figure out how to shift it from being a negative limiter to a positive encourager, it's going to lead right into our sixth commandment, which is learn how to be content.
This is one I think you're going to have to do a little practice on this. This is a skill set that takes time to develop. And I want you to really become deliberate and purposeful in determining what makes you happy. If it's the cup of coffee. Enjoy it. Really think about what makes you happy. What do you appreciate in life? If you can start developing that muscle, that skill set, life is going to be so much better. I was just driving into work this morning. I think the reason I've been in such a good mood.
You have been in
I've been in a great mood this morning, and it's probably I'm in my third cup of coffee. That helps. But it is also, I'm listening to a great audiobook. I told you guys I'm listening to Dave Grohl's Storyteller's book. But the part of that I love when you're listening to a musician's autobiographies, they tell you songs that had huge impacts on their life. So I'm pausing the book, listening to music that then makes me think of historic things that were going on in my life. All of that stuff I've realized brings me happiness, brings me fulfillment. I spend time trying to make sure I put enough of that in my life, like riding my bike to work. On the summer months, that puts a smile. Even thinking about it puts a smile. Find out what makes you happy. All those things I said are very inexpensive, but they bring happiness. You need to find the things that bring you happiness and content, because I will tell you, there are forces out there. We live in a very consumer society. The American economy is driven by an entire industry that tells you spend.
Right.
You want more, you want more, you want more. And I'll tell you, human nature is working against us as well, is because we talk about this term, and a lot of you have probably never heard this, so we're going to explain what it is. the hedonic treadmill.
That's right. The hedonic treadmill, according to Investopedia, describes the tendency of humans to quickly return to a stable level of happiness after major life changes. And you may say, oh, well, that seems like a good thing, right? Like something happens and then I return back to a stable level. Well, the problem is our human nature, we always want more and better and more and better and more and better.
We live in Franklin, Tennessee, is one of the wealthiest communities in the country. And one of the things that I see, and I'm like, oh man, where do they go from here? Is that you see so many people, and I had this decision as well with my daughter turned 16, 17. That first new car, it's not uncommon in such an affluent area that you see parents buy their kids brand new, like
luxury
I'm talking
cars.
about BMWs, Mercedes. I think it's the craziest thing in the world. I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, so if you're a neighbor of mine, I'm not judging you. But it is one of the, I am kind of judging you, but it is one of those things that's sitting in the background where I know that child who receives that super nice car, they're going to absorb it. They will appreciate it. They'll get the endorphins and dopamine hit and all the other things that come with it for probably about 6 months. Or maybe that's not going to be long.
And then it's just a car.
And then they're going to want more. And where do you go when you're already at the tippity top of the mountain? And that's something that bothers me. That's why if you're curious, my daughter paid for half of her car. And she drives what is that car now? It's 15 years old. It's 2006
That's
to
right. Yep.
20. It's 15 years old at this point, and she's half of the ownership. She's got skin in the process. This is the stuff she's going to have lots of upside and character building as she gets to build more in the future.
What I think is so interesting is in that I say we, this is not a you guys thing. This is a us. This is all of us do this. We try to like convince ourselves. We have these conversations with ourselves saying, oh man, if I could just have this house, I'd finally be happy. Or if I could just afford that car, I'd finally be happy. Or who has said this, and I know this one is going to hit close home. If I could just get to a point to where I had made this level of income, then I would be set. Then I would be happy. Then I'd be okay. Well, the truth of the matter is, unless you can figure out that contentment piece, that goalpost is always going to move and always going to move and always going to move.
And we've done shows on funny little words that impact how you make financial decision, and one of them is the Dittero Effect.
That's right.
And I thought this was great. We have the definition of what the Dittero Effect is, and this is actually named after a monk that was given, he did some work and was given this beautiful robe. And now, because he was given this beautiful robe, he just hated everything else in his house, where he lived. Yep. He had to replace everything so it would match his beautiful robe. And that's why the Dittero Effect states that obtaining a new possession often creates a spiral of consumption, which leads you to acquire more things. Now, here's what I think is great. We never know. When we have our show content meetings, we put together the outlines, and then we tell FTE Daniel, go let loose. And Daniel wrote his own Dittero Effect example of his personal life. This is pretty self-confessional, but I'm just going. I don't want to mess it up, so I'm just going to let you read this to our audience.
This is from FT said, in my freshman year of college, I thought I wanted nothing more than to get out of student housing and have my own room. My sophomore year in college, I lived off campus and had my own room, but I shared a bathroom with two other guys. All I wanted was my own bathroom. Well, the next year, we moved into an apartment that had 3 bedrooms, and each bedroom had their own bathroom. I was happy in the new place for a while, but then I began to want my own apartment as my other roommates were a little noisy, left dirty dishes out, etc. When I moved to Franklin, I got my own apartment, but I still wasn't happy. There were spiders, and the washer wasn't that great, and it was small. I wanted a bigger and nicer apartment. Now, for those of you who just heard that spider comment, there is a very unique story where our FTE Daniel had his 15 minutes of fame on the local news. If you want to see Daniel on a news story talking about the spiders in his apartment complex, we will put that in the show notes for you when this show goes live. Just kind of archive that away.
Brown recluse
That's right.
spiders, too.
You're going to want to see that. So then he said, last year we moved into a very nice apartment with great management, no spiders, and a nice washing machine. But now I'm looking forward to purchasing a house. There's nothing wrong with looking forward to the next big thing in life. I don't regret finding those nicer apartments or wanting to buy a new house, but I did realize that I was looking forward to the next big thing so much that I did not appreciate what I had or where I was. Now I intentionally take time to reflect on how far I've come and how fortunate I am to have such a nice apartment. It really helps me feel fulfilled, and that what I have presently is already more than enough.
I think this is key information that I want all my financial mutants to hear, because this is something I've had to mentor Coach Bo on, because all of us financial mutants, we're calibrated to be achievers. You're trying, you have your own mental checklist of all the things you need to accomplish in each stage of your life. And I think sometimes we do get so excited for what's coming that we don't enjoy where we are right now. So once again, I'm going to kind of Seinfeld this and bring the beginning to the end and tell you, here's the teachable thing you need to understand. Be purposeful in determining what makes you happy, what brings you contentment, what brings you fulfillment, and enjoy each stage of your life. Don't let time slip by that you wake up and you're 50 years old and you were living this miserly lifestyle and never actually got to enjoy all those stages of life that really will bring you that life of fulfillment.
And so, Brian, we have this conversation right around like, okay, well, how do people practice that contentment? How do you get there? How do you define that? Well, that leads perfectly into commandment number 7. The way that you begin to understand what makes you content is to know your why.
Yeah.
Understand what your why is to the things that you're doing, the decisions you're making, and the path that you are moving on.
Well, if you don't know your why, you definitely fall prey to the YOLO syndrome of why not, because you only live once. Because that's the Epicurean just immediately living for today, when the reality is most of us are going to live to the ripe old age of in our 80s or late 70s. You need to be planning for the long term, but there's a lot of distractions out there just telling you, hey, do it. Just do it. Just go here, go there, do that, spend this. You need to be very purposeful and know why you're actually here, what you're doing. This is why I try to get people, we try to mentor you. Figure out what you're supposed to be doing so you just don't have a job. You actually have a career. You have the fulfillment. I think that stuff will make you wake up and be excited about going to work. Wake up excited to do life this week. You need to know what brings you purpose.
And I think what's so great is when you start to develop that, when you start to understand what your why is, it allows you to become laser focused on the decisions that you're making, right? When you say, okay, is that vacation home, is that part of my why, or is that a distraction? Is that new luxury car, is that part of something that actually brings me fulfillment? Or is that solving some goal that I don't really have? Is that fulfilling some void that shouldn't even really be there? The more clearly you can define the why, and especially if you're like married and there are other folks who are like dependent upon you and the decisions that you make, man, when you guys can figure that out, it helps you figure out, okay, how are we going to prioritize the things that we're prioritizing? Why are we going to choose this path for our child? Well, when you understand the why, it removes all the distractions and it allows you to stay granularly focused on that thing that you really want to accomplish, not lost in the minutia of the everyday, okay, what am I thinking about right this moment?
So good. So good. So that leads to number 8. And guys, you need to hear this right now, because we live in an era where life is technology, innovation is driving things. Don't take shortcuts.
Yeah, again, we live in this world where we want instant gratification, instant satisfaction. We want to look at something, swipe, order it, have it show up later that day, right? We've gotten accustomed to that. We've gotten used to that. But some things in life, you just can't take a shortcut on. There are long paths there, and there are long paths there for a reason.
Let me give you the old man on the porch. I walked to school in the rain that turned into snow, uphill moment is that when I think about where we are today, and with the technology and innovation where you can go buy any ETF. You can go buy zero internal expense mutual funds with no commissions or anything else out there. You can buy indexed target retirement funds where the only thing you have to determine is how much you can save and invest and when you need it, and it does the rest of the work.
Right.
Creating wealth has never been simpler in any time in human history. But yet right now, there are so many distractions. And I see out there, and I'm trying not to be the guy that just, and I bite my tongue on social media. I just sit there and because you guys, I tell you some of the things I'm thinking like, woo, glad you didn't post that. Because I see people getting caught up in the frenzy of what they perceive as easy money.
That's right.
And then they think they've found a shortcut to wealth creation. And look, hopefully you're one of the people that doesn't get left holding the bag, because you can create money and wealth, even wealth, from fads and other things. The guy who came up with the pet rock probably made a lot of money off of it. Person. But that doesn't mean that everybody who's jumping into some of these trends is going to come out on the other side fundamentally okay or foundationally okay in the long term, because markets have a way of correcting themselves. So don't fall for the credit cards. Don't fall for the get rich quick and the overly hyped hot dot trend that's going on in the investment marketplace right now.
We talked about with commandment number 1, like one of the tenets of like building wealth is live on less than you make. Take that amount that you're saving and invest it for the future. And if you do that, you will be able to have the things that you would like to have in the future. But we as a society fall prey to, no, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. And don't just take our word for it. There are actual statistics that prove this. We know that right now in America, this is according to Clever and the Motley Fool, 47% of credit card users carry a balance from month to month. And we already said that like credit card debt should be no-go land. You should not have a balance. If you're going to use credit cards, you should pay them off every single month. But 1 in 2 folks almost are not doing that. They are carrying some sort of balance. And 56% of the population has tried buy now, pay later services. I want the thing now. I'm going to get access to it now, but I will pay for it later. All you're doing when you do that is you are literally robbing, stealing, taking away from your future self today. And someone's going to have to pay the piper on that. And unfortunately, that someone is your future self.
There's so many examples that come to mind when I follow content or create content on this, is that I think about Will Smith does a great, if you go on YouTube, he tells the story of when he was famous but broke because he discovered credit cards at a young age right after he had his first hit, but then he had he had a drought.
Yep.
And he's riding the city bus and he's got people asking for autographs and he's on the city bus
like,
because he's broke. Because you need to understand that there are distractions and these things are false bridges. You know, you get out on your own and you get offered that first credit card and you're like, well, hey, I'd love to go buy this. I'd love to go buy that, but I just don't make the money to afford it. And then somebody says, well, hey, use this piece of plastic. This will be your bridge. What you don't understand, and we've covered it earlier on today's show, is every dollar that you use that bridge not only has to be paid back, but you probably are going to pay some interest you can't pay it off. And you're missing out on the opportunity cost of what if you'd have used that in a more healthy way and invested it. Be very deliberate with how you're using and purposeful with how you're using your time and money so that you don't get distracted trying to find that shortcut of debt. And then right now, between the Reddit post, between even the massive creation of every time I turn around, there's a brand new cryptocurrency that's promising you riches. Do not lose the fact of the grounding stats that Ramsey Solutions has put out is that most millionaires are 49 years of age when they cross that 7-figure mark. And the majority of them hit it in their employer retirement plan. A lot of wealth creation is slow, steady, dollar cost averaging into that monthly, into that quarterly investment portfolio, and then creating wealth from that.
Yeah, and some people say, oh, well, that's so boring. Well, it's kind of supposed to be, but it's effective. You would rather be boring and effective than exciting and ineffective. And I just worry that a lot of people fall into that trap of really, really exciting. They want to go do the strategies, buy the thing, have the exciting thing, and they look back a year, 2, 3 years, and they're like, man, what a waste of time and opportunity and resource that could have been working more and doing more for me for the long term.
That leads to number 9. And by the way, everybody who is watching this has already got a huge step up in this, is that number 9 is always be learning.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. We live in a world and a society today where the ability for us to expand our knowledge base is maybe easier and better than ever. You can have an answer, not always the right one, but if you do enough research, you can have an answer to almost any question, any problem you have instantaneously. You know, our ancestors didn't have that. They didn't have the ability to do that. And so right now, folks who aren't taking advantage of that, aren't capitalizing on that, are missing just a wonderful opportunity.
You say our ancestors. I want to give everybody a time capsule. When I was a kid in K through 12, do you know when you had to write research reports, there was no internet back then.
Right.
You were basically, and look, I consider myself blessed that my parents actually bought that expensive encyclopedia set that sat out there, the Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever it was, that everybody had, and you were time capsuled into the year that your parents bought that. That's where history stopped at that moment. So if your parents bought the 1983 Encyclopedia Britannica and you're writing a research report in 1989, you didn't get the 6 years of innovation in your research. And that's just the way it works now. You can be in any conversation in the world and somebody can say, hey, do you remember? And if you just have like 2 or 3 clues, you can type it in on Google or these magical devices that are in your pocket, and it will tell you the answer. And I think we take for granted that was not always the case. I mean, information is so much easier, so much freer, but people are not taking that access to the unlimited information out there and turning it into a positive. And that's why I say there's a difference between having access to actually absorbing and then learning and then applying these concepts to create success for yourself. So you need to understand being a student of life can be immensely powerful for you in the long term.
Yeah, Brian, there was I was watching the show, and I can't remember what show it was, but I told you this. There was this great quote on there where the guy said, if you're born poor, you can't control that. Like, that's out of your control. Yeah. But in this country, if you die poor, that one's kind of on you. Because there are opportunities if you can master some of these commandments. And I think that you and I are prime examples of how education was a ladder out of a circumstance that might have been different. Neither one of us came from money. Neither one of us came from resources. But because we had the opportunity to receive an education or go out there and learn about financial planning, it created amazing opportunities over the long term. I think that even now today is more available than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
No, it is so much better. And by the way, this shows up in the research on society. I mean, that's what I love being a student of life, because you'll come across little nuggets of information. You go, wow, that's something that ought to be shared. And we had a whole discussion in the content meeting about the research, and I can't remember which one of us found it from the content team, but the Brookings Institute has 3 factors that will actually tell you whether or not you're going to be success with a probability of, 97, 98%? So listen to these markers of success.
So here are 3 markers of success I came up with. Number 1 was graduating high school. Number 2 was working full-time, having a full-time job. And number 3 was being married before you had children and not having kids before the age of 21. So the Brookings Institution looked at this societal study, and this is what they found. For those that follow all 3 of these norms, the poverty rate inside that segment of the population was only about 2%.
That's amazing. Those are pretty those 3 things. And that's what they ought to teach that in high school. I mean, these 3 things, hey, don't do this, do that, and I think you're going to set yourself up. But they also put in the research, what happens if you break all 3 of these? Yeah,
so for those that break all 3 norms, the poverty rate grows to 79%. So there are some markers of success, some things that you can focus on that may provide you an opportunity, at least stack the deck in your favor to some extent. Just so you know, overall right now, the poverty rate in the U.S. presently is about 13.7%.
All this is just, because I know, look, you said it. If you're born poor, we get it. And that's why we love that we create free content. It's out there. It's accessible. Anybody can watch this. This is your ladder up opportunity. Don't blow it.
That's right.
And that leads to number 10, which is take advantage of our abundance cycle.
Yep.
Guys, this started as a passion project. In 2006, you see the iPod is right over my shoulder. There's a reason we put it behind glasses, because when that thing died, I was like, this thing has changed my life, but it's also changed a lot of your lives because I got inspired to just start a nerdy hobby, a hobby so daggum nerdy that my wife had to go tell my friends, please don't pick on Brian because I know he started this thing that nobody else is doing in 2006 with podcasting, but it's really something. And I look back and I think about the way this thing has turned into the abundance cycle where you come here, you learn, you apply this, and then if you do everything we tell you, we don't ask for anything in return until you get to the top of the abundance cycle, which means you've had success. And then you say, man, I am so successful now, I don't know what to do with my next dollar at this level, or I'm just so busy that I need to bring somebody in, or this is so much money. When you have 7 figures and you don't come from wealth, you're like, what do other people with 7 figures do? How do I not blow this opportunity? Because now I'm running a 7-figure business with my assets. We're hoping you will remember the abundance cycle and our Johnny Appleseed project where we come and plant the seeds of knowledge. They grow for, maybe it takes you 5 years, maybe it takes you a decade. We will be here to help you figure out what the next step is with your abundance.
And so if you are someone who falls into that category, you are someone who's interested about, man, that I feel like I've lived the abundance cycle and now I am ready to take the relationship to the next level. Go check out our website. You can go check out aboundwealth.com. You can go to moneyguide.com, look at the Work With Us page, and kind of see exactly what it is that we do, how we help folks on a day-to-day basis. Or maybe if you're not there, maybe you're not quite at the level where it does make sense, we are going to keep loading you up. We are going to keep putting out this content. If you've not had a chance to go check out our website, moneyguide.com, we have a resource page out there available full of free resources. You heard that right, absolutely free resources where you can answer questions like, man, what should I do with my next dollar? How should I think about deploying my army of dollar bills? Or, hey, should I refinance my mortgage? How powerful can my dollars be? What are some unique tax things that I don't know about? All these deliverables are available out at moneyguy.com/resources. They're available for you for free.
Guys, we love creating content. I came to work this morning, told the content team in the pre-show meeting, we are blessed to do this. I mean, I can't thank you enough for showing up, watching, supporting. I wake up feeling so purpose-driven every morning, and it has a lot to do with the feedback we get from you guys, the reaching out to us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love that we got to share the 10 financial commandments to creating wealth for you and your family. And we look forward to helping you graduate to the abundance cycle and taking a relationship to the next level in the coming years. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team, out.